Today in Across the Fence, farming practices that protect and preserve Vermont's natural resources. We'll put an ear to the ground to learn what farmers are doing to care for soils and crops. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. A single acre of Vermont farmland can be a challenging place to manage. Soil types can vary from one field or one row to the next, and just plowing everything up does more harm than good. Instead of doing things the same way they've always been done, farmers are turning to new management practices, and they're working. While techniques like cover cropping and no-till planting are gaining acceptance, University of Vermont Extension is providing further education to farmers across the state. On March 1st, Extension will offer a symposium that explains and explores the benefits of cover cropping and no-till planting. To learn more, I'm joined by one of the symposium organizers, Jeff Sanders. Jeff is a member of Extension's Crop, Soil, and Pasture team. Great to see you.
Nice to see you.
So remind us all about these two management techniques, cover cropping and no-tilling.
So cover cropping is the practice of seeding a cover crop, typically around here it'd be cereal rye or winter rye, after the cash crop has come off. And that crop grows throughout the off season, harvests sunlight, builds carbohydrates in the plant, and then also sequesters nutrients, as well as prevents erosion. And no-tilling is what it says, it's no-tilling. So you're just planting the corn into the soil without using tillage equipment before it.
Without digging up the soil.
Correct.
Yeah. And so what does that do?
So what that does is that prevents erosion in that period of time between when you till the soil and when the corn grows and will begin to hold the soil. So what we're doing is we're not leaving the soil bare or unarmored during that period of time. And it also helps build soil health by not stirring that soil and breaking up the biology in that soil.
Is cover cropping the same as when a farmer rotates crops to rest a field?
No, it's not. So cover cropping is an additional practice that farmers are using to build soil health and improve the soil and improve the environment, in addition to the crop rotations and the other practices that they're using.
Because farmers who don't do cover crops, once, say, the corn comes off the land, the field would lay just bare.
Yes, it would. So when you're driving up Route 7 or Route 105 and around Vermont and you see the fields green in November, that's all cover cropping that the farmers are putting on those fields to prevent erosion and sequester those nutrients.
And at the same time, build up the soil, as you mentioned before.
Yep, absolutely.
And what about no-till planting? Has that technique been around for a while, or is it new?
Well, no-till planting really came back in the 60s in the U.S., actually in Kentucky, as a result of better programs to control weeds. Tilling was typically used as a weed control. And in Vermont, it's really caught on in the last 5 to 8 years because of other reasons, more environmental than I would say just a weed control thing.
And why is the practice of no-till farming becoming more widespread in Vermont?
I think farmers are realizing that they need to do more to help the environment, and also when done properly, it increases profitability. I can think of 3 farms readily that have increased yields and had to build bunks and change their management practices because of the cover cropping, no-till management on their farms have actually increased their output.
Well, that's important too, because I mean these practices cost money to do.
Yes, they do. Cover cropping, you have to buy the seed and apply it, and no-till, typically you would have to make improvements to your fields as well as to your equipment lineup to be able to implement it properly.
How much of this acceptance by farmers is based on research that you're doing versus seeing the farm next door being successful in implementing these kinds of practices?
I would say it's a combination of both. I think we do a lot of outreach and a lot of education, and 5-6 years into it, we're getting a lot more success stories. We've had a lot of failures, but we're getting better at it, and the farmers are getting better at it, and now their neighbors are seeing their neighbors get better at it, and they're saying, what is this? And they're taking a second look at it.
Because what you do, you researchers do, is try these practices and then keep trying them until you get it right, so that the farmers don't have to go through that trial and error period.
Well, partially true.
Yeah.
The issue is that we're trying it on the farmers' fields, so they're succeeding and failing with us, and we need to commend them for taking that risk. They're putting some fields at risk while we hone this system, and so they're rewarded when we are successful, and they're learning along with us, and then they share with us.
Well, to find out what a farmer thinks of no-till planting, how it works, and why it works, Across the Fence visited the Manning farm in Swanton.
We milk about 460 cows, mostly Holsteins and some brown Swiss and a few Jerseys. We probably have 450 acres of corn and probably another 450 acres of grass and alfalfa. I heard about no-till in college. We went to visit a lot of farms, and we saw some guys who had been trying it out, and one guy had been doing it for, I don't know, 10 years, and they seemed to like it, enjoy it. We started out, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. UVM planted some with their planter, and it worked okay. And then a few years after that, we upgraded our planter and started trying our own and just trying new things and adapting it every year a little bit to try something new and see if that worked better, or try to make it work for our situation. So the seed comes out under here, and then this presses the seed into the ground so it gets good seed to soil contact, so it comes out good. And then these are some Thompson closing wheels that close the trench back over the seed so it doesn't dry out. This is a fertilizer, cuts a little groove in the soil 2 inches beside the seed and 2 inches below it. And then it sprays the fertilizer into the ground, so it's underground and not on top. Usually you can't even tell after these wheels go over, you can't tell where it had been at all, really. This spring will be the 5th year we've planted with it, and we're still adding things to it and taking things off and trying new things to see what works the best for our farm and our soils. The biggest part of the field management is you have to know what fields you're going to use. You can't use your worst field. You need to try to use the better fields that you have and drain them correctly. You can't try to drive through a swamp with it, obviously. I would say the biggest risk is it's not as forgiving as conventional tillage. If you're not doing it right or planning right, then you're gonna have bigger issues. You gotta plan, know what you're doing. You can't just do that. And learning from what you did the last year and trying to make that better every year. You can't just keep doing the same thing, try to make it better every single year. Well, it really helps with the soil erosion, especially with cover crops. It keeps the soil where it's supposed to be and out of the lake, which keeps phosphorus out of the lake, which nobody wants to see. And it also, I don't know, it's just better for your soils, helps build organic matter, which is, I think, the biggest thing you can do to help your soil is add more organic matter to it. I think it's definitely worth doing, or worth trying, at least on your farm. It depends where you are, what your soil types and fields are like, but it's worth at least giving it a try. But you need to do your homework and plan for what you need to do to be successful. You can't just drive out there and try it and hope it's going to work. I'd say the biggest thing is find somebody who's doing it and talk to them, see what works. And you don't have to buy a planter to start. There's ones that you can rent, and they can no-till one field for you to see if it works.
Our thanks to Nick Manning for taking time to speak with us. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about the upcoming No-Till and Cover Crop Symposium, and I'm with one of the organizers from UVM Extension, Jeff Sanders. Now, you're actually hosting a panel that Nick is taking part in at the upcoming symposium. Is his experience what you recommend for other farmers?
Yes. Started off simply, tried it, and continually is refining the system and making investments in the system. And it's a management thing, and they're committed to making it work on their farm and through the ups and downs, and so they are successful with it now, and it's through perseverance and management.
Mm-hmm. Is that a pretty typical scenario?
Yeah, I think so. It's a typical successful scenario.
Mm-hmm.
People have tried it. They just try it on some poor acreage and it fails. And we're getting to the point where we know that that's already going to happen, so we can try to steer people away from failures towards successes.
Now, off farm, much of the talk about farming is about water quality. How do these techniques reduce the impact that farming has on the environment? I
think cover cropping and no-till, there's synergy between the two practices. So you're building soil health, you're retaining nutrients, keeping them from getting into our waterways. You're stopping erosion, which is the main pathway for phosphorus to get into our waterways. And by building soil health, we can better utilize the nutrients that we do put on the fields. So it's a win-win all the way around as far as the environment goes.
Mm-hmm. And as far as farmers taking part in these kinds of techniques, I would imagine seeing one farm be successful is inspiration for another farm.
Yeah, it catches on. I'm working a lot up in Franklin County, and a lot of acres are getting no-tilled up there now, and all different sorts of farmers are doing it, big, small, medium, with different techniques, but the same management practices would apply for across all those farms.
Because no two farms are the same.
Absolutely correct.
So we're coming out of a down year for the price paid to farmers for their milk, and the outlook for 2018 isn't much better. Can farmers afford to make these kinds of investments?
I would say that it's a system approach, not so much just a technique. So if you buy into the system, it's no different than a milking parlor where you would upgrade it and get the benefits of it, but you have to do the planning and you have to make the investment in time. And if you just turn your cows into a new milking parlor coming from a pipeline, it's going to be a mess, and you have to do a lot of training. It's the same thing going from a conventional till to a no-till system. You have to make the investment, and then you will be successful.
Mm-hmm. This is the 5th year that UVM Extension has hosted this event. What have you learned over that time?
So what we've learned is that it's a system, not a technique. There's a lot of other things that go into making cover cropping and no-tilling successful, and I would invite farmers to come join us at that symposium, to come learn with us and allow us to share what we know to help them do a better job.
Mm-hmm. Do you see that this is sort of a technique that's going to continue to evolve?
Yes, for the people that are doing it successfully, they won't go back. There's cost savings and yield. They picked up yield, they picked up quality in the cover cropping. Some people are double cropping and getting a lot more forage than they were getting. So I think for the people that are doing it successfully, they'll definitely continue.
Mm-hmm. As far as this technique of no-till, how does the weather affect that?
The weather, so one of the main factors in being successful at no-till is having the patience to wait out bad weather and only plant when the conditions are right. And Nick Manning alluded to that, and that it's management. And you've got to wait for the weather to be right to plant. But the no-till system, cover crop system overall is more resilient than a conventional till system. So the extreme weather events, no-till fields will handle many cases better than a conventional field.
Because we had a very wet spring this past year, and I know a lot of farmers lost their first round of corn because they put it in. But if they had been doing this no-till system and had a cover crop on the land, it might have been beneficial for them in that wet weather.
I would say that every field is different, and it's field by field. In some cases, there probably was an advantage to having a cover crop down, and in some cases, it's a no-till system, waiting till the ground was dry instead of pushing the planting on wet ground would be beneficial. So it's field by field in its management.
Is there something beyond cover cropping and no-till that farmers need to think about when it comes to the environment?
I think the next horizon for us is going to be more with better utilization of nutrients on fields through technology such as variable rate applications and that's the direction I think we're going to go in over the next 10 years. Is we're going to put the nutrients that the plant needs where the plant needs them in the right amount at the right time. And we're going to use technology to do that.
And some of those technologies are being used already.
Yes, they are, and it's about building the infrastructure to support the technology. Vermont's a very small state, and agriculturally, corn acres, we really don't have that many to support the technology that's going to be needed to bring us to the next level. And UVM Extension is working on that, and we have farmer partners that are working on it as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, the 2018 No-Till and Cover Crop Symposium is being held at the in Burlington on March 1st. Pre-registration is required, so go to the website that's listed on the screen, or you can call 802-388-4969. That's 802-388-4969. And that's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.